Thank you very much, Ambassador Lois Young, for chair of AOSIS, for participating to this first interview with the UNDP, discussing the main results and conclusions of the Placencia virtual event that was successfully organized the last 3 days. Madam Ambassador,
before you start, may I just say good morning to you too, and happy Ramadan Mubarak.
Oh, thank you very much, Ambassador.
It's
a great pleasure. I have a first question. What are the most urgent priorities in SIDS region, and how are this impacted by COVID-19? And what are the gaps in solutions and innovations for you?
The first priority for SIDS is food security. The issue is that the Prime Minister of Belize, for example, has said that there is no money coming into the public coffers. He says, and I will quote him, he says that the coin of the realm is but a trickle, and he can collect no revenue. So this has a big impact because a lot of SIDS spend huge amounts on food imports. And if there's no foreign exchange, then the shelves will be bare. So that's the immediate impact. The second immediate impact is we have got to give social assistance. We cannot inject 2.3 million like some countries have done, and more will do more. We cannot do that. We are giving out food baskets. We are giving out handouts through Social Security as the agency to enable people to actually just live from day to day and to pay rent, just as in the States, pay rent, pay your utilities. So that sort of social assistance is key. The third issue is we've got to contain the virus. We've done a very good job doing that, but we cannot allow the virus to community spread. So, we have to have testing equipment on hand to do that. And we have to have the medical, the ventilators and the PPE, I think they call it, for our frontline care workers to use. So we've got that expense to deal with, and the other two that I just mentioned. So that's the immediate impact of COVID. The second part of your question is solutions, gaps, innovations. Well, the Prime Minister of Belize has already written to the IMF and to the World Bank and asked for three things: a dedicated window for SIDS, access to the IDA crisis response window, which is that IDA crisis response window is confined to low-income countries. There are several SIDS that are classified as middle and high income, which I want to say has absolutely no connection with the reality on the ground. And if I just segue off and deal with that right now, SIDS have been advocating for a widened criteria for assessing SIDS on that scale that the IMF uses, a criteria that includes our inherent vulnerabilities. And it hasn't happened, but we have been calling for it for a long time. So the second thing that our Prime Minister, as chair of SIDS, because chair of AOSIS, asked for is for us to be included in that IDA crisis response window. And the third thing that he called for is for special general special drawing rights to be allocated to all members of the IMF. And the SDRs, as they are called, allows you to call up on reserve funding that the IMF has. It's a rather technical thing. I had to sort of research what it was he was calling for, but I think that I've gotten that the SDRs represent units of account for the IMF. They're not currency per se, but they protect your foreign exchange rate, and they allow you to make a claim on currency, which is the foreign exchange that we need. So we've made those calls on the IMF. And the Secretary General of the United Nations has made a similar call on the IMF. And in a private conversation, phone call with the managing director of the IMF, and he has also done so publicly. He has called for this special dedicated window for SIDS. And my reports back publicly were given at one of our plenary meetings is that it was not very favorably received. So we have an uphill battle we have been dealing with these issues, but COVID has laid them bare.
Yes, I understand perfectly. And that's part of also in the midterm review of the Samoa pathway, one of the main recommendations also, which is linked to what you were saying about the IMF, is access to concessional funding for SIDS, and taking into account something which is acceptable by all the countries, a vulnerability index, not only related to GDP, but also a vulnerability index which should be precise, and all the agencies should have the same one in order for the small island developing states have access to concessional funding. My second question is related to how should COVID-19 recovery in small island developing state incorporate vision of the Paris Agreement and the Samoa pathway?
So we are focusing in SIDS recovery on resilience, building resilience of our health systems and infrastructure, food production, tourism, transport, and our manufacturing processes. And these are some of the same systems and sectors that will need to be made more resilient to deal with the sudden onset of climate impacts. So the recovery in these critical areas should be seen through the lens of the climate crisis. Secretary General said it very well. He said, when we seek to recover from COVID, we need to recover the right way then. We need to recover the right way with the climate crisis, which is always there, looming in mind.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. The next question will be mostly on what milestones have SIDS reached since COP23, and which action areas have been prioritized, and what ambitions require more fervent action. Based on the discussion that you had in the Placiencia event, what are your main conclusions on that?
So COP23 was the Fiji COP held in Bonn, and COP24 was in Katowice, was in Poland. And in Poland, we got 90% of the Paris rule book settled. We could not agree on common time frames for your NDCs, your nationally determined contributions, and we could not agree on markets. We want to complete these outstanding matters. We need to complete the common time frames, which means when it is the framework within which you will declare your nationally determined contributions. And it's a kind of little web there, because it's like, if I do a 5-year projection, when do I start my 5 years? And if you do a 10-year project, another country does a 10-year projection, when would that country start their 10 years to count it, and there's overlapping. So we were not able to agree on the common time frame. So we have that outstanding. And the markets, of course, everyone knows about the markets. We need to have those in place, because we can't push for ambition. We need them as the backup in our push for greater ambition, because greater ambition it's not just up in a vacuum, it falls within a structure. And the structure is what is in the Paris rule book, what is and what we hope will be in the Paris rule book as to reporting timelines and the markets. So we need to have those in place, and that this is why we are pushing for greater ambition. And then hopefully when we get to COP26, we can complete those two outstanding aspects and everything will come together. The requirement for filing enhanced NDCs in 2020 is in a COP decision 1CP21, that you will file your enhanced NDCs in 2020. So, you know, it's a not a puzzle, but it's a whole structure, a whole ecosystem that has to come together to make the Paris Agreement a reality on the ground.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. And it is completely aligned to what the Achim Steiner, the administrator of UNDP, has committed during the midterm review of the Samoa pathway to support all the SIDS for enhancing their NDCs based on their requests. That's something very essential for the SIDS to be able to respond to their ambition.
That SIDS promise that was made by the UNDP is a very straightforward, simple, and extremely important promise, because we are SIDS and SIDS lead. But to prepare your enhanced NDCs, it takes money to do that, especially if you're going to do it across all sectors. And what you put on the world page before the world as your NDCs is what, as a member of the global community, you are responsible for achieving. So it cannot be done without thought and input and a lot of help in getting it put together. So when the UNDP made the SIDS promise to help SIDS countries and others, I think we have 12 SIDS in the group, prepare their new and enhanced NDCs to comply with the 2020 obligation, it was a great contribution towards this movement, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ambassador. My next question is, how does COVID-19 reshape SIDS planning and priorities for COP26? And how is AOSIS preparing for COP26?
So COP26, we think, COP26 is going to occur in 2021. Exactly which month, I don't know. I only suspect that it will probably be around June. And so we actually had the Placencia Ambition Forum planned long before COVID hit the ground. And it was especially planned to keep the drumbeat of ambition alive going into COP26, assuming it would have been in November of this year. So we went ahead and we had the Placencia Ambition Forum, and the messages that came out from the AOSIS group were loudly and clearly and humbly passed on to the COP26 presidency for when they take up the presidency, which is the United Kingdom. So we did that first leg of preparation. And going forward, for whatever new date the COP is, we will seize every opportunity that we can to push the SIDS agenda and to work with the existing COP presidency, which is Chile, and with the new COP presidency. I have to say that at the Placencia Ambition Forum, the representative of the United Kingdom for COP26 accepted the message that came from the Minister of the Environment of Belize, as that relayed to him what came out of the Placencia Ambition Forum, the discussions that took place. The next thing we called upon, so that would be the SIDS contribution so far. The next step, the next item that's coming up is the Petersburg Dialogue, which is coming up next week. And that is the dialogue at which developed country parties will declare their intentions to try and put in place the Paris Agreement. We hope that there will be no retreat from the promises that were already made, and that there will be a reiteration of those promises. And at the Placencia Ambition Forum, we already got a commitment from Germany that there will be no retreat from Germany's commitments under the Paris Agreement. And then going forward, I remember hearing at the Placencia, or I heard our distinguished Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC process saying that AOSIS should continue to seize every opportunity to put forward, to press the climate ambition and agenda between now and COP26. And that's what we intend to do.
Thank you, Ambassador Young. My last question is, what are the ways in which UNDP can best support AOSIS and small island developing states in developing their NDCs and actualizing their ambition for climate resilience, sustainable development, and ocean management?
So UNDP is a good partner. We think you can probably, I'll just put them in 1, 2, 3 numbers, identify the challenges that we are experiencing in finalizing the NDCs. You're involved there already with the promise to SIDS. So we have some challenges. We think you should go in to the support in a very clinical way and identify the challenges and deal with them. The second thing is that we think the UNDP can connect those preparing the NDCs with expertise. It's amazing how when you talk to someone who knows a particular aspect of the NDC preparation, it just opens up a whole new world and you say, that's what I need to do. And so we need UNDP that has that far reach to connect us with the expertise. We need, because of what has happened with COVID and the fact that we're all meeting virtually, we need for the UNDP to help SIDS to access virtual platforms. You would be surprised how many platforms we cannot access either because there is a license fee that's necessary or the obligations are great. We need your assistance in helping us to access virtual platforms and other subscriptions that are necessary learning tools. There are other subscriptions out there to magazines, to platforms to learn. We need to help you. We need you to help us with that. And finally, Riyadh, I think that it's not business as usual. UNDP should recognize its strengths. Then recognize the strength of SIDS. We have our strengths, and you marry the two where that is necessary, and or you use your strengths to enhance our strengths. Let us go in with a scalpel rather than a sledgehammer to crack this nut. This is what I think we need to do going forward.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Young, for your wisdom word. As UNDP, as you mentioned, with the consultation with you, we have developed the Enhanced Small Island Developing States offer in order to continue to support you in the implementation of the Samoa pathway, because we still have only 5 years and we need to continue and to accelerate the implementation and get results as soon as possible, focusing on climate action, blue economy, and digital transformation, because you are on the fourth industrial revolution. And as you said, the SIDS are very ambitious, and we need to support them in their ambition. We need to support them to continue in their development and a new development model due to the pandemic. So the investment of UNDP will continue, we can reassure you, we continue to invest in re-energy transition, in adaptation, in nature-based solution, in taking into account that you have 90% of the EEZ of the world. So the blue economy is a huge potential, as you are all large ocean states. And digital transformation, as we can see, many solutions were provided to small and developing states these days in the last weeks during the pandemic on digital apps for the government to be able to manage the pandemic. I agree with you. Having access to more platform, having access to more knowledge is something very important to support the leadership of the SIDS for their own development. And that's what UNDP is committed, is currently doing by developing a lot of SIDS tools like the SIDS Bulletin. Thank you very much, Ambassador Young, Permanent Representative of Belize and Chair of the AOSIS. Thank you very much.
Thank you
and
too.
have a nice day.
You too.